I was reading an article. I didn't realize I'd pressed I pressed start the broadcast. Wow, that's nearly 3 minutes of me looking at the screen. I hope I didn't do anything too embarrassing. Now I know I'm live. Yes, thanks for your comments. I was trying to find an article and I had an audience to it. Thanks for thanks for bearing with me and trying to reach out through the medium of the internet to let me know I was live. I'm just lucky I went back to the screen. Could have been watching me read for goodness knows how long. Oh, Henry wants to call. I'm not using the platform. Well, I'm using Periscope, but I can't take callers using this laptop. Let's make a date for approximately 10 or so hours from now. But yes, there's so much to talk about with Super Tuesday. Elizabeth Warren's just dropping out. And I tried to get the hashtag Thank You Elizabeth to take off after she lost her home state. And it became fairly inevitable that she was going to drop out. I say fairly inevitable. Let's be straight. Let's be clear. It was inevitable. She came third in her home state of Massachusetts, the state that I was potentially going to move to, but that's on hold as well. So, yes, it's very fresh news that Elizabeth Warren is leaving the primary race. Look, a lot of people like her, and the article I was actually reading when I started accidentally broadcasting was this. Let's see if I can share that with you. If you can just see the headline there, it says, "Why Elizabeth Warren is losing, even if all of your friends love her." And they've changed the title of that article now. I guess it wasn't going very popularly like that, so I can show you they've changed it now to something perhaps less offensive or less patronizing. Instead of "Why Elizabeth Warren is losing, even if all your friends love her," it's now "Why Elizabeth Warren is losing, even as white professionals love her." So if you have an education, a college education, you're more likely to be an Elizabeth Warren supporter. But the thing is that educated people do is we project and we assume other people have our level of education and have our dedication and devotion to that level of education. And also our level of having moved on from patriarchal framings. So a lot of people in America are still have inherited frameworks from a more patriarchal Puritan time, and they are uncomfortable around women being in leadership positions, but also they're uncomfortable around progressives. And this is a problem for progressive candidates, that they inherently have to be negative because they're pointing out flaws in a system to say, let's change all these flaws. So progressive candidates have a base who agrees with them and say, yes, those flaws are the most striking thing about our country at the moment. And they're often people who are very consumed with domestic issues. But people who form their identity around patriotism want a world leader want a president who leaves Congress to deal with the domestic issues and who themselves presents confidently and will represent America on the world stage in a way that says, rah, rah, we're the best. Don't assume that we're going to be underconfident in any conflict of interest. We will be confident, we will defend ourselves. So there's a lot of Americans that want America to have that strength, that projection of confidence. And I would say that's probably one of the reasons why people fell for a snake oil salesman like Donald Trump, because he projected that confidence, and that was a highly desirable characteristic for a lot of voters who prioritize safety, who are still concerned about threats to America's safety, for whom 9/11 resonates or has more psychological salience, as it were. So that's a bit of a $5 word. Don't feel a repeat of 2016. That's tempting to succumb to. Don't do it, man. It's not the same. There's a lot of similar features, but Elizabeth Warren wasn't as broadly appealing to the Dem electorate as Hillary Clinton was. And she did not have strong Black candidate support. So a lot of the people who liked Elizabeth Warren fall into the category of that title from the second iteration of the Vox article. I'll bring it back. Why Elizabeth Warren is losing even as white professionals love her. So not Black people. She didn't have a strong base of support amongst Black people. And maybe that's because Black people understand America better than many Americans do. And they understand that when white supremacy is an issue, and the Russians are even helping magnify that problem of white supremacism being attractive and pushing propaganda to amplify people's concerns about Black Lives Matter movements, etc., that compounding that problem with the opportunity for sexism to be an issue as well is too much of a gamble, that America cannot gamble on Donald Trump right now because he is a threat. He's not an idiot. He's a cunning criminal type person who money launders, who will perpetuate his criminal regime through appealing to America's fears, through their need to feel safe, have a confident leader who validates something they've been taught since children, that America is exceptionally great and has no so I've got distracted by the comments now. Mr. Ed, do not deride Joe Biden on my podcast anymore. He's the unity candidate, and we are falling in behind Joe because we need Trump gone. And if you need motivation, watch some of those videos of children separated from their parents who didn't know who to blame, who felt abandoned by their parents, whose parents have been suicidal, who are psychologically messed up for possibly the rest of their lives, meaning they're intellectually messed up as well, because your neurons are stunted when something that traumatic happens to you in your infancy, childhood, or even your teenage years. It is bad. And if you need help just to get behind Joe, just remember the people who are within the blast radius of Trumpism, or the immediate blast radius, because the rest of the world is still within the periphery of that blast radius. We are all suffering as a consequence of Trump's relaxing of EPA standards, so that it's more easy for corporations to poison not only Americans, but the rest of the world who eventually comes in contact with American corporate poisons introduced to the air and water streams. Yes, so I have a bit of an expose to do with Bernie, and I could have put that in the title. The best vice presidential choice for Biden would be Kamala Harris, from my perspective. Black people deserve to have somebody from their demographic group in a position of power, and she's an accomplished woman with an amazing record, a prosecutor, so strengthens Democrats' claims to be just as concerned with law and order as Republicans. So Republicans have a mantle of law and order that is now more evidently hollow to more people. I think a significant number of Americans now believe that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Having a strong prosecutor, accomplished prosecutor, who's good at questioning people, who's really able to cut to the chase with people like Barr and Kavanaugh in their questioning, and who also advocates for Americans in a really positive way, who says we can be the best of us and we just have to tweak some things, like address the fact that the mortality rate for Black women is 3 times that of the mortality rate for white women in relation to childbirth and pregnancy, but that also the mortality rate in general for American women is rising relative to the rest of the highly industrialized world, where the mortality rate is falling owing to medical advancements. So why should American women be dying at a higher rate than their mothers and grandmothers? Val Dennings is an amazing politician as well. Mr. Ed says, hey, Missy, I'm blue no matter who. Good to hear. I know, but just let's not give a platform to Russian propaganda terms. And all of Trump's name calling fits very well into Russian propaganda. They know that catchy name calling is a permission slip to the worst instincts of the worst people. Yes, so I'm all on board with Elizabeth Warren ending her campaign and mulling over. She's not endorsing anybody yet. She doesn't really need to. If whoever she endorses, there's going to be lots of backlash for her. It's not necessary. So many people are endorsing Biden right now. I think a lot of moderate supporters were with Elizabeth because of liking a well-educated woman as a restorative voting tendency, having seen the travesty of 2016 when the white supremacism that was amplified and enhanced as an electoral factor by Kremlin propaganda was compounded by the sexism that has just turned Republican-type people against Hillary Clinton for decades, or made them more receptive to just believing whatever BS Fox News spun about her, and receptive to all the BS investigations that Republicans initiated against Hillary Clinton, later admitting that they did it to reduce her standing in an electoral sense. I'm tempted a little bit to block the Bernie person because I don't have time for you guys. You're unconvincible. There's rabbit holes people can fall down. So if anybody believes that Warren despises Biden, who's a admirable character who's introduced healthcare to millions of Americans, who introduced the Violence Against Women Act, who's done a lot and is associated with America's most popular president, President Obama, as a help and support to him. So, pushing untruths like Warren despises Biden would get you muted or blocked if I had my finger on the button. Do I have to block more Bernie bros or maggots? I have to block very few people during these broadcasts because I have a helpful team who do that for me. And if anybody wants to apply to also be an administrator of the broadcast, please let me know, because it is very helpful. For my first time ever today, I saw somebody had followed me, clicked on them to vet them, saw that they were a Bernie supporter, and just went, I can't even be bothered, and just blocked them straight away. So I blocked a Bernie supporter today without even interacting with them at all because I cannot be bothered. Their arguments are tedious and nonsensical, and I can see and sympathize with that earnestness, the moralizing that's causing them to overlook the actual evidence of Bernie's long history of sabotaging the Democratic Party and indeed sabotaging elections for Americans. Oh, Henry's happy to help. Excellent. I'll have to follow you on Periscope and then add you to the administrators list. I'll try and write that down so I remember. Okay, named it. I'm glad you'd be voting for a Democratic candidate. And I don't need to have that up on screen. It's probably a little bit painful for Warren supporters. Being a Warren supporter either likely means you're white with a strong educational background, or you're a kind, compassionate person who wanted to redress the injustices of the 2016 election and how Hillary Clinton had to contend with not only a charlatan businessman who had a false reputation as a successful businessman, which we now know was completely the opposite of the truth, someone who was $8 billion in debt during the 80s. Thanks for sharing my broadcast, Heidi. That is helpful to have people listen. And speaking to people other than talking out loud to myself is a key component of what I aim to do. So thank you. Someone says they were very receptive. Abrams. Oh, Abrams was your second choice. I admire what Stacey Abrams is doing with her work with what's it called? Fair Fight Action. And I advocate for people to join that group because, as we've seen, that the queues in Texas to vote, people stayed in line for 7 hours. It's not only outrageous, it's a form of poll tax. So that historical analogy is very apt. It's a tax because you have to be wealthy enough to be able to stay in line for 7 hours, to not risk losing your job or an amount of income if you have to go and stand in line for 7 hours. And it's unimaginable to most people who might walk in and out in 20 minutes maximum, half an hour. Half an hour would feel like a significant imposition. To imagine the commitment and the dedication and the hardship endured by those who waited for 7 hours in line. People were apparently encouraging each other, saying they must not want us to vote, so we'd better stick it out. And that other people maybe brought them pizza and snacks and things, which is good because my phone would run out of battery with a few hours of intense use in line like that, and I would be devastated to then go, can't be contacted by my family, what could be happening, etc., if I was standing in line for that long. Someone's saying they verified that both California and Texas polling places had the same problems due to faulty new equipment. Oh, Henry's saying he donated to Fair Fight Action in your wife's name for Valentine's Day. What, amongst other things, what a perfect Valentine's Day gift. I would have loved something like that as well, actually. I'll tell my husband. I'll be like, this guy had a good idea. Someone's saying they go in 5 minutes. Do you know what? I see that profile picture a lot, Bizadino. Is it that you're an account who changes their profile picture a lot, or is that just a face that is used by troll accounts? I'm concerned now because I've seen that exact profile picture, under some different names. Zinte's lucky in his precinct. He can walk in and it would take 5 minutes at most to vote. That's excellent. Now, I'm going to take a little time out just to I'll still be here, but I'm going to bring something up on screen for you if I can. So yes, confirmed that Warren's told associates she's not planning to endorse later today when she announces she's dropping out. A new poll has found that Obamacare is at its most popular that it's ever been amongst the American public since it was signed into law, which is important because that's an Obama legacy. So it's very important people are recognizing that their healthcare options are improved by that action taken by Obama and helped along by Vice President Joe Biden. Joe Biden is definitely a unity candidate. People have to realize Congress gets things done for the public good, and the president facilitates that, but is also a symbolic leader to a significant degree who is elected depending on who most people feel they can trust. So a lot of people could trust Obama, and that was a beautiful thing to see in the American population, that there were enough people who said, I trust this man. And yes, that even in a country which is still at the moment white demographic majority, could elect a man of color who obviously came across as very capable and inclusive, etc. So with Trumpism, you've got a lot of hyperpartisan or negative partisanship being activated amongst Republicans who felt the opposite, whose view of the economy, and I'll share this with you, let's see, because it's very partisan. Democrats are more concerned about where the economy is going at present, and Republicans are much more upbeat about it. And the figures have been jumping of Republican endorsement of the economy under Trumpism. People say, oh, that's partisanship. That's hyperpartisanship on racist steroids, because for Republicans to not recognize that the economy was on a recovery trajectory under Obama is part of their receptivity to Fox News, racist bullshit. Oh, I said a bad word, about the economy. So let's see. I'm still trying to find something for you. I found a thread. I'll need to scroll up a little bit. I was very excited to be followed by a polling account that looks pretty good. And I was like, why are they following me? That's so cool. Maybe they follow anybody, but it's always cool. Okay, here we go. I found it, so now I'll share it with you guys. Share screen. You forgive me for the bad word? I'm sure you are. All right, let's have a look. Make it a little bit bigger. And lighten up seeing a lot of fake news articles. Thank you. Thank you, Heidi, for the compliment. Yes, Biden is a candidate who can win the Electoral College. Nobody's perfect. And whoever's his vice presidential pick takes on increased significance because he's older, which is awesome for women because it means it's easier for a female vice president, to be shoehorned into the position of president. So I feel not as if women have lost with Elizabeth Warren dropping out. I feel as if there is room for Kamala Harris to take a very significant position in American politics. And I think once Americans have experienced a vice president who's a woman, it'll help break down some of those psychological barriers to a woman in a leadership position. Thank you. I try to be awesome. All right, I'm going to read this out loud to you because it's probably a bit small. This is an account called J. Isaiah Bailey. He's awesome. He's bringing up some findings from Pew Research. So it's important to understand that partisanship is a driver for these perceptions. I'll just scroll up to have a quick look at the perceptions. Can you see the directions here? There's views of the economy. So the headline is, views of the nation's economy remain positive, sharply divided by partisanship. So here we have the red column that's gone up and up and up, Republican, lean Republican. I'm presuming that's independents, the gray line, and the lowering view of the economy is Democrats. So it shows that because partisanship is a lens through which to see the world, it shows that it's not just obviously hard data that informs people's opinion of the economy. It's their feeling about the direction of leadership of the president. I think Democrats have less rose-colored glasses on about the president's war on trade. So I think the Democrats' views are more in line with reality there. But at the same time, yes, let's unpack this phenomenon. It's important to know that Republicans' views have proved to be much more elastic than Democrats. I'm going to read this paragraph out loud because it's so important. Currently, 81% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents say the economy is excellent or good. So that's a significant majority. These views have changed only modestly over the last 2 years. Okay, so it's been consistently high estimate of the economy. But between November 2016, just before Trump's victory, and March 2017, the share of Republicans with a positive view of the economy approximately doubled from 18% to 37%. And by November 2018, they had doubled again to 75%. So between November 2016 and November 2018, Republicans' views of the economy went from 18% thinking it's positive to 75%. That is some white supremacy bullshit right there. That is saying, look, a white man is now in charge of the country magically. A white Republican is in charge of the country magically. Everything's fantastic now. The economy doesn't turn on a dime. They're unaware of the trajectories of the American economy, and they're just psychologically, a switch has flipped, and they're like, everything's roses. It doubled between November 2016 and March 2017, 18 to 37%. That flip is damning because that's just a couple of months. So by contrast, Democrats' assessment of economic conditions have changed only modestly since before Trump took office. So currently, 39% of Democrats and Democratic leaners say conditions are excellent or good. And in November 2016, 46% had a positive impression of the economy. So it's fallen by 7%. That's much less elasticity in Democrats, implying that they're more connected to reality. And they're like, yep, okay, a similar amount of them thought the economy was good then and think the economy is good now. Whereas Republicans, white Republican in power, 18% to 37% from November to March. November, December, January, February, March, everything suddenly roses from 18%. It's just amazing. Kamala is in a good position as well because her Senate seat will go to a Democrat since she's in California. Good point. All right, I'll make my face be a bit bigger again. There we go. Zinte says maggots couldn't spell the word trajectory. Well, that's a stereotype I'm going to correct because we think Trump supporters are just uneducated, poor white people. It's not true. A substantial part of Trump's base are middle-class, non-college educated white people, i.e. white people with a bit of a chip on their shoulder about the meritocracy. So people who hate people like Hillary Clinton and Elizabeth Warren for being educated women, sitting outside of their framework of being more religious, less concerned about the environment, being religious and more concerned that women shouldn't be allowed to say that they don't want to have a baby. Children are a gift from God, blah, blah, blah. And if you don't allow that, then you're undermining femininity everywhere and you're devaluing the institution of motherhood, etc. I know a little bit of how they feel because I interact with people like that, or at least I have previously. Some people say they would like Kamala Harris to be the Attorney General. I say no, she is needed to get out the vote. Look, Biden's doing that. People are happy to light on a majority candidate who's positive, who doesn't have the same downside as Bernie Sanders, which is that Bernie can hide his communist sympathies, but not perfectly. He went to Moscow for his honeymoon. There's video of him singing without his shirt at a Moscow bar with people singing in Russian. That's where Bernie Sanders honeymooned, and enough Americans, older Americans, still have a very negative association with communism, which is based on history and fact and reality. Communism has killed millions upon millions of people, and they know periodically idealists get their hands on political systems, and then bunches of people get consigned to re-education camps, and democratic safeguards get thrown out the window, checks and balances go, and you have cult leaders who tell you they're going to fight for the people and bless the poor, etc. Jesus-style leaders who ultimately kill millions of people. Somebody said, hi, pretty lady. I don't even mind. My campaign at the moment is to say, look, feminism, we don't have time for your shit right now. It's okay to tell people they're pretty as long as you make an effort to be open to intellectual characteristics of a woman, to not interfere with a woman who's working in a professional capacity. I'm not quite professional, so I give you a pass to say I'm pretty if that's what you want to do, but don't take up too much of my time. I saw Chris Matthews, a little Daily Show montage of Chris Matthews from Hardball complimenting women reporters in a very creepy and distracting way. So he was asking somebody to come closer to the camera. She was very pretty, but she was unnerved by that. She didn't understand why he was asking her to come closer to the camera. It was effectively like he was having a joke at her expense. So, but what's my general point is that yes, for women, being beautiful is a currency, but putting too much emphasis on it denies the agency and impact of women who aren't attractive. So I don't want to be part of that too much, but at the same time, whatever, prettiness makes the world go round. I don't have as much physical strength as a man. I'm grateful that my husband does stuff for me. And my other feminist gesture for the day is that I opened the door for a man That's what all I need to do. I don't need to complain if anybody opens the door for me. Thanks. As a courtesy, I'm happy to open the door for a man who's holding something. Zinte says, I have a very attractive brain. Thank you, Zinte. Much appreciated. You did say, hi, pretty lady, in a respectful manner, but imagine if I was a professional journalist and you said it to me as I was trying to interview someone. In that context, saying, hi, pretty lady, would be distracting and disrespectful. So feminists have a point to make that we question that more now than we would have previously. And normal people who aren't as intellectual and don't, overthink issues as much as academic people do, would just be like, whatever, flirting makes the world go round. If you don't flirt with women, then you don't get to attract them and build a buzz or a frisson, as the French would say. And you don't propose to them, you don't get engaged, you don't have families, you don't procreate. And there's a case to be made about that as well. We shouldn't want to eliminate flirting from the world. But there's also a point to be made that don't mess with a woman trying to do her job. So, all the people on Periscope can't see who I'm talking to. It would seem very like an imaginary conversation. But someone on YouTube that I'm simultaneously broadcasting live to said, hi, pretty lady. And they've been conversing with me a little bit. How confusing. Thanks for bearing with me, you guys. Okay, so we've established that Republicans have a very elastic view of the economy, and we're going to substitute the word in there for racist and partisan. And that's how they can jump from 11 to 37% of Republicans telling pollsters that they think the economy is doing well between November 2016 and March 2017. This is another interesting point. While it's fair to say that you can't see. Okay. No, you probably can't read that, but still, at least you know what I'm reading to you now. While it's fair to say the public feels positive about the economy, that doesn't mean Trump is being given credit for it. While the president's ratings on the economy continue to outpace his overall job ratings, they significantly trail positive attitudes about the economy. So here we go. The public's a bit split. So the blue chart, the blue bar is strongly approve or somewhat approve. And the red bar is disapprove. That's his job as president on the left. And so people strongly disapprove of that. That's bigger than the blue bar. Whereas on the economy, the people who designed this graph and represented these figures have done so in a really clear way. They've lumped together the strongly approve and the somewhat approve in two different shades of the same color, so you can really see. So the economy is even with approves and disapproves. So that's split more evenly than job as president, which people are like, no, you've done badly, Donald. A majority think that. Also a majority, 6 in 10 Americans expressing positive views about the economy, also shows a majority of Americans would prefer to see changes in Trump's economic policies. Okay. Can we guess why that might be? Because Trump sucks and his trade war was unnecessary and is hurting manufacturers and farmers and spillover industries associated with the manufacturing industry. Off to dentist, that's fine. I should get off, shouldn't I? I've been talking for long enough, really. I've introduced a couple of points which I wanted to do. I've got distracted with some feminist topics that are a bit obscure. And let's go back to my main point, which is coronavirus is going to escalate massively over the next few weeks. I've heard you can make your own hand sanitizer with aloe vera and alcohol, but you don't really need to do that unless it's massively sold out in your area. You need soap to wash your hands because it's apparently not spread by air. It seems to be most likely to be spread by contact with surfaces or somebody, if somebody's got nasal secretions or mouth secretions and they've touched a surface and then you touch that surface and then touch your face, you can get the illness that way. The people most at risk of dying are older people and people who are immune compromised, etc. Oh, wow. I spent ages having a conversation with someone who's a MAGA supporter. Oh, my gosh. Why did I bother? That was such a waste of time. Wow. Okay. If anybody is on YouTube, can you please... Actually, no, you can't block Donald Trump supporters, can you? Oh, Henry's saying, just wash hands with soap and water for 20 seconds. Yes, there's lots of videos out there how to do it. Cover your thumbs, do. But of course, masks are getting sold out, and masks don't really offer any preventative, protective benefits to people who use them. They're good if you're sick and you don't want to get people in your family sick. In that case, they're probably better used at home if you're taking care of a sick family member, or if you're on the front line, if you're a healthcare worker, in which case, yes, your employment should help you with masks, etc. Healthcare workers are likely to be hard hit. I feel sorry for healthcare workers, but keep up your morale any way you can. Oh, no wonder Henry wants to chat. You're in the thick of this, Henry. I've forgotten which state you're in. Is it Connecticut? Is it Atlanta? And what else do we stack up on? Have you seen the scenes in Australia? There's massive runs on toilet paper. So toilet paper has been selling out in supermarkets. That's what Australians apparently think. We need that. In the advent of a crisis, have toilet paper. Henry's in Atlanta. There you go. So somebody got tasered in a shopping center over a conflict about sold out toilet paper. And that made me post something about, is Australia the Florida of the Southern Hemisphere? Yes, Atlanta's a city in Georgia. I'm aware of it. I have read some of Gone with the Wind about 30 years ago. So who's closed all schools? I think Iran has closed all of their schools and universities at this point. So we can kind of look ahead to a different point on the trajectory and say we're here, but it's an exponential trajectory of contagion. Oh, Henry's doing a doctorate with the CDC about vaccines. That's very relevant, Henry. Congratulations to you. So what was your reaction when Donald Trump was trying to ask if the flu vaccine was the same as a vaccine for the coronavirus, or if the vaccine would be ready just because they'd invented it, even though, yes, they have to devise a vaccine and then test it, and clinical trials take months and months and months. So that'll be maybe a year and a half before any vaccine could be released to the public, even if they have, in lab conditions, created one that works now. Oh, Dave Monroe's cat is saying that it's Italy that's closed their schools. I wonder if it's Italy and Iran or just Italy. So anything you want to tell us about vaccines from your doctorate that you're doing with the CDC, Henry? Breaking news. No. It's already been breaking news that a few different laboratories think they have come up with a potential vaccine. Henry, you've typed the word applauded, which is fine. I think you meant to write, I was appalled at his lack of knowledge given the experts available to him. I think Trump probably has attention span difficulties, but all his life he's traded off his ability to hear something and then summarize it in a confident way. So in a way that rolls with his own prejudices and preconceptions. Ibris One says that was probably a glimpse into literally all presidential briefings. I think you're right. They wanted to make the public feel like they weren't being left in the dark, but really we were given a big insight into how the president probably just makes assertions that jive with his understanding and how limited his understanding is. That he comes across as confident, but that he doesn't know what he's talking about. And you can apply that to all subject areas. Sorry, Henry, I shouldn't be a grammar fascist. My husband's on his way home, so I will send him a photo to say, see you soon. And a message. What else are we going to say? Wash hands, take care of people who are elderly. Can you believe it? My father, is going on a cruise. I'm like, no, Dad, don't get on a cruise. Henry is making a curriculum for nurses earning a bachelor's degree with regard to the top 8 vaccines. Is that nurse practitioner? Someone wants to know what's on in the background with the graph. I'll make it bigger for you for a second so you can see. It's a graph representing polled attitudes about Americans in relation to Trump's current economic policies. So most Americans want to see changes. Let me quickly read that out to you. 80% of Democrats want to see changes, and 56% of independents want to see changes. So the total is 56% of polled Americans want Donald Trump to change his economic policies, whereas 63% of Republicans are delusional and want it to stay the same. That'll be that same group of Republicans that thought the economy was magically so much better once a white person was in charge. Super duper racist. I would have been much more settled over the past few weeks if I just paid more attention to Black women on Twitter who knew that Bernie Sanders was going to be trounced in the South Carolina primary. What's the fourth section if they're independent? Total, Democrats, Independents, Republicans. So the first section is the total. Everybody poll all together. Then Democrats, Independents, Republicans. I hope that helps. I'm going, you guys, because my husband's back. So you're doing a PhD on a curriculum for nurses for the 8 most important vaccines. That's interesting. Yes, vote like a Black woman. That's a great motto to end on. Good luck with your PhD, Henry. What a timely PhD. And talk to you all soon. Bye. End broadcast. Good night, Paul. Thanks for joining in. Thanks, Henry. Thanks, everybody. Bye.